always we do a lot of devices, that's why we make here and there. But what is happening because we have to speak about this the high school teachers today and adults. And then finally, in 30 seconds as well, giving massive motivation initiatives because you have all this kind of investment the two motivated to the six. The 15 seconds of the new evidence. So, the first question, for me, it's all about the concept of okay, we need to think about practice. And I don't get passionate. You guys, you guys, the manufacturers, people are going to look at what's happening. I don't know whether it's something to sit back. What is that? What's your comment?
I think John is fine. Probably what you see is coming out is coming through the course, right? So, I think that's something that what you see here, our members go to look at the company and sort of the account go to the right now to see the moving away from single discussion shows, some of them are still so we also advancing also sure that the product is well. And of course, as I mentioned again, we also providing routine asking the collect and recycle. For example, we do one example. So say again, we use the Coca-Cola moving away from the sky bottles to blue color. Clean color so it's easy to recycle the clear bottles rather than the color bottles.
Okay, very good.
If I can show you a plastic as a chemical with 98% single-use plastic free, the 2% is so the journey is there. The future generations at unity level will actually be ready to be free, where every year we sponsor a competition at the university level so that the students compete for various SDGs, kind of the ideas, innovate, and we help them incubate and do those ideas. So we are smart because this is a pipeline of ideas that we will open up and we will just keep on innovating. At high school and primary level, as we have to do before, now we go second partner when we want to do the SDG challenge. So we want to see schools in action. So we are learning them already in the subject program. We are implementing the Alliance program and the Persona Foundation. And surprisingly, the students are very competitive. We let them come up with their own sustainability initiatives, what they can do, and the change in the school is amazing. So we now have about, before Corona was going to do manually, or now they're going to do an individual challenge. So we want to have these discussions with us.
Finally.
Thank you so much. One of the things we're doing as Skeptic is getting into partnership with different stakeholders. As I said, one of our key sponsors is the World Bank and the USA. And what we're doing is in our investment parameters of required pitching, project sponsors pitching. One of the things now we're starting to do following against this environmental, social, and governance report is for most of the sponsors to actually align themselves with that. That qualifies you for your investment to be shortlisted for pitch to the pension schemes. And as I said, I've given 2 examples of what so far we have approached the pension schemes. The consortium was launched in 2020, and that is why the numbers are limited. We are also working with the PPP unit so that whatever infrastructure opportunities are, then they adhere to the environmental and the community regulations on the ground. For example, if it's a road, let's adhere to the community and then environmental impact that that road will have. So this is a discussion that we put on the incentives, negotiating preferential return for projects that have under the impact investing. And so we're starting to see most of the sponsors that now align the strategy in their promotion of the guidelines.
All right. Thank you so much. And very much. One approach to panelists. Thank you so much for your time. I'd like to allow you now to speak. And of course, very round of applause as well for more because just we're something set up for meeting work. That was a very important session there, and a very good way to start when you talk about stewardship of it. Most of us of it is behaving with what we do. So thank you so much. It's good work. It's visible. Well, Monday I was talking to in the yeah, something like forest, right? Yeah. And there was a competition about not just planting trees, but growing trees and being kind of close. That it's one thing to just plant a tree and then say, yeah, I planted 50 trees. Then what about them? One year up and this year. So growing the trees, the other different so the planting that are based on the planting as well. This is an ongoing journey because we just we just wait for something that's not the journey that we need to keep evolving with it. Now, very quick one here, we have Milton Lord, head of partnerships, open capital, and briefly tell us about your view of the investment space. So it will be kindly start coming forward around the approach to me. So the question that will be trying to help us understand is where are the investment opportunities? Development financial institutions are expected to be the key funders of climate in the process of Africa. So where are these investment opportunities?
Some people have a heavy problem with why is that? Because you are like what MC said, not an expert. Secondly, you don't have too many answers on where we can find investments. But as I start to the first presentation today, I feel a little bit more confident, I must say. And we really just take this opportunity to provide a bit of perspective on the work that our organization and others have done around the space. And I hope we continue this conversation, not just in our conversation, but really do what works when the leaders are I serve as head of partnerships for an African management consulting managers, all founded in Kenya, but working all the time. For us, the reason that kind of speaks to us in a language that we understand is our mission is really about advancing African continents. But secondly, contributing to the building of the future population of African. And if you go at this time, we don't have you don't really have economies and always so for us, climate is just something to impulse of business. Not just our business, but the price of concern These companies working across different sectors, renewable energy, but we don't just advise these businesses on the strategies, we assist them with implementing capital, debt, equity, grants, and everything. On the other hand, as part of our community, we serve a wide range of investors. Investors that are local in the domestic market, but also international investors. Investors that are finance first, looking for financial returns before they have other considerations. But also impact investors, some of whom are looking for impact returns alongside fiscal dividends, but also impact investors who impact investors. And so it gives us an interesting perspective on trying to being able to have different views on how different entities see the market and how they do so, not as a penny, but also a group of our clients that are interested, not just the investors, as well as our businesses are. And a lot has been said about government. But in reality, government is us. We are the voters. We are the taxpayers. And government doesn't exist in that situation. Government is us. So a lot of times we reference government and talk about their failures, their efficiencies. They are reflecting us. We're looking at ourselves in the mirror. And so, as you know, we feel, at least from the perspective of time, business, we have an interesting perspective of centuries, but also we see a lot of trends, we see what has happened in the past, as businesses share with us the health, and we review the financial and other supports. But as we work with them on strategies, forward-looking strategies, we see their ambitions. And some of those ambitions are not just about but we see ambitions that speak to how they want to do so to really offer a little perspective, let me share a bit about how my impact for first few days of this week, I spent in Syria. We watched some people call it Kenya, but actually Syria is in the center of Kenya. Syria sits at the heart of this country. And I come to Syria by road. Because we get to see it. See someone who used to know that what I really want to put my application is so some of the work that we're doing this year involves this year. Looking at the single company, and really working to present the zero on this is where money can be placed, deployed, and realized. So in this way, one of the challenges that this must really settle the city is celebrate management. Celebrate management because we need to zero. It's a problem in the world. The problem pretty much in every other center. And one area is investment. Investment is not happening in a way that's efficient, and people are not thinking. The situation in Israel today is such that the current dump site that this city has needs to be decommissioned in order to operationalize the Israel International Airport. Why? Because dump sites, slaughterhouses, attract birds, which causes bird strikes. Now, Israel International Airport is an economic opportunity. Big jobs in Israel. Will bring tourists and other business people in Israel and the northern part of the country. And so if one is talking about doing business, it's a no-brainer. But how many of you in this room today would invest in an opportunity in Israel? The kind of pension funds talk about investing in North America. I'd like to pitch you, Israel, or a place where you can do business and invest in climate change. Not as in Israel, in all our parts of the country. So solid waste management, manifestation of one of Africa's biggest strengths, urbanization. It's not just solid waste management, it's water, it's power. We talk about climate smart agriculture. But when the food arrives at home, how do you cook it? We've spoken a lot about trees today. On the road coming back from the silver yesterday, was crossing the the side of the road for people selling alcohol. 2 days ago in the paper, and I think someone talked a little about migratory today. Another East African country was welcoming a company that is basically marketing clean cooking. Today, if you look at the paper, the government is talking about subsidizing certain types of fuel. We talk about policy, but we also see manifestations of dysfunction in the local environment because people are. And the reality on the ground is that those people who are selling alcohol need to have a livelihood just the same as we do. They have every right to make an honest living, just the same way as we do. Trees. We spoke about tree planting. I see an asset in trees. And if we're talking about investing in trees, then my view of investing is no longer tree planting. It's about making an investment in biological assets that could be kept for posterity, but could also be utilized at some point in the future. So trees, long-term assets, pension funds, long-term capital. We put the two together. Makes sense. I'm an investor in tree companies. Those tree companies are trees. It's a tree. You look at their financial reports, you talk about biological assets. And so, to me, it's a no-brainer when you think about the approach that we need to take around tree planting, around forestry, whether it's commercial agroforestry, whether it's consumption forestry. It's how do we view them as assets? If we view them as assets, we really make sure that we don't just have the sequence, we plant them, we nurture them, we harvest, we utilize successfully. What happens over the last 5 years of the climate finance? I've wondered whether we're talking about what Jesus said, new wine, and old wineskins. Are we talking about what we've always been doing, but giving it different flavor, saying it in a different way? And the reason I flag this up is really not just about the money, but who are the actors? Who is actually taking advantage of the opportunity? And William Maruki, who I met in the Soto downside 2 years ago, we are beneficiaries of moment finance. Not just a high-flying investor from London, New York, with what Nigerian team was called someone who can speak fast, with flashy PowerPoint. Who are the beneficiaries? Who can access it? As a marketplace, can you all this? Is climate finance going to be an important, or are we going to have a divide? In the same way as when you look at Google Maps, you look at the solar things, you see green, below the solar, and you see brown, more than the solar. Is climate finance going to unite us? This is a question for us and others. Are we going to use climate finance to fund the usual suspects? Or are we going to use climate finance to offer opportunities for the unusual suspects, for those who need it most? And maybe you can find for yourselves who the usual suspects are. But for me, these are the questions that we need. These are the questions that we need. So, in closing, some thoughts about how it is that Kenya or Africa may take advantage of investment, where it is that is financing it and how it might be utilized. We've spoken about education, awareness, creation, essentially the foundational skills to take advantage of it. Hopefully, like no other area of investment and financing, climate investing, green financing requires data. You need data in order to make decisions, you need data in order to report, you need data in order to track progress. And unfortunately, for the most part, I don't know why people say mathematics started in Africa. You see how popular it is. And so, to me, I think this probably is maybe the biggest area where investment will be required in order to connect information before we. The last, but probably not least, the regulatory frameworks. The big question is, do you need regulation in order or can regulation come after and show the way to move it? Oftentimes, from where we sit from an advisory perspective, there's a feeling that regulation should come. We need regulators to fill us. But I think, for the most part, I think it's market clear that we need to show regulators in market regulators because it's market clear as an account access to the questions that we have. And so, I may not necessarily have answered the question about where the investment opportunities are. But my hope is that, by maybe posing maybe some of the questions you're asking yourself, contributed to the conversation and we'd be more than happy to engage with any of the interviews that they say the kind of about places like this.
Thank you so much for the round of applause to you. I think we've actually touched on some areas here, and I'm sure we'll put some questions over quickly, because we did have a very short break after this final presentation. I'll take them down. We'll try and squeeze in some time for questions from you. But right about now, I just want to have somebody, Chancellor, who's the Director of Business Development, to come as well and briefly decided to get into the break session. He also was going to tell us about the financing law, carbon infrastructure, bridging this gap, the investment for. So if you can come as well, this is the checks. A round of applause to him. I can say much about him what they're doing, but let him take the opportunity. So at this time, you can do focus there as well as doing something else. So Sub-Saharan Africa annual gap of financial infrastructure is estimated to a range of between USD 68 to 108 billion. The role of credit guarantee to bridge the infrastructure funding gap and accelerating investment in the private sector is what we really want to see. So some of the chats will be happening.
Good morning, everyone. So thank you for giving this opportunity to talk a little bit about what Garanco does and how we can to the challenges that we are facing as obviously global family. So just by way of introduction, my name is Samuel Chasia. I'm director business development and policy in capital markets for a company called Garanco. Garanco is a fund that is focused on kind of the infrastructure space and specifically trying to deal with deficiencies or problems that exist in the deployment of infrastructure sustainability and focusing on development. So what Garanco does now. So what Garanco does is part of what we call the private development group. And this is a group of companies that we put together and funded by a couple of international finance governments and international countries to actually really give interventions in the provision of infrastructure and development countries. And they are kind of different, looking through the full kind of spectrum of infrastructure space. So kind of from early phase companies to early development, construction, and actually operation of infrastructure. That is what this kind of so we have basically different interventions, again, starting from kind of early stage projects at the concept stage. So we have critical solutions, we have technical assistance fund and they work very closely trying to work with different stakeholders in the space. Very early on, kind of coming up with projects that can actually be addressable and ultimately developed. Once we kind of have those concepts, we have two companies called Infraco and Infraco Africa. And what they basically do is kind of come in at the early stage of projects to try and actually get that really critical pre-development capital that allows projects to actually go through the feasibility study, do all the work that's required to actually make them practical. So that critical infrastructure is very, very key infrastructure, and most companies actually do that in terms of working with developers to kind of get projects to a position where they actually practical and actually be able to contest. And then once those projects get done, bankable, the Aramco and we have a sister company called the Emerging African Infrastructure Fund. We basically come in and provide that capital. The funding, the EIF, college, does traditional kind of EFI funding into projects, whereas the Aramco focuses on providing guarantee to actually support projects that actually being managed. So as you can see, the full spectrum of the life cycle of projects is covered through that. In terms of who the funders are for the report, like I say, these are the different funders that we have, and there are basically 7 countries here. United Development, Swiss, Sweden, the Netherlands, Australia, and then we actually have facilities with the AFP and the Canadian government. So they have come together and put funds together that allow these different companies to actually go and do their mission. And so, like I say, the Aramco is one of those beneficiaries of these funds. Altogether, they put together about $3 billion now funding the actually funding conventions to actually make sure the infrastructure is being deployed into it. So moving to Aramco in particular, and like I said, so Aramco actually has a presence in both Africa and Asia. In Africa, we had part of the region on the office, and I think we kind of have some experiences here with a particular players over here, with terms of projects which are kind of located. But what Aramco does actually is our mandate, like I say, is to deploy capital in the through guarantees to catalyze private sector investment in infrastructure. And why it's important, and we'll talk a little bit about this, the way to sustainably deploy infrastructure, and I think there's one of the earlier sessions about how infrastructure has been financed in the past, has been predominantly through the advice, and they have traditionally actually provided financing. What the Aramco's kind of mandate is to basically catalyze local currency financing via guarantees. And it's important to have local currency basically finance these projects. And you kind of get into some of the sustainable kind of goals that what Aramco can bring to the table. But as a general concept, we think it's important to get local currency, local players, local investors involved in financing. What that does is number one, allows these projects to actually be financed in a way that's sustainable, meaning that it's important for, since infrastructure is usually consumed in local currency for the most part, it's important for this financing of those particular long-term financing projects to be funded in the same currency as consumed. So that's what the Aramco basically does. We have different products that we actually there. These are all converted products, traditional kind of partial risk guarantees. We have 10 extension guarantees. Again, we try to kind of match the needs for long-dated kind of financing for projects. And again, the full guarantee is another way, as well as not also helping the in terms of providing these solutions. So that's kind of what we're doing. The Aramco mandate is we can do projects up to about $50 million and provide 10 of them in 20 years. So again, really focused on getting the large ticket items with long tenors. So that is actually how we deploy construction. Just a little bit about the current portfolio. And so, like I say, the Aramco actually focuses in developing countries. Right now, we're focused on Africa and Asia. And so, if you look at the map over here, we've actually done, I think, since 2005, where the Aramco was started. I think we've done about 55 projects in over 50 countries. You'll see that this will look like this, and in very many different sectors. Right? And again, our view here is that infrastructure is very, very critical in the achievement of sustainable development as well as climate change. kind of had some interesting discussions here, especially the panel discussion about being able to deliver sustainable development and impact. And I think these are where what the Ramco's mission is, apart from actually trying to get these projects delivered. What's important to us too is actually really making sure that we feel whole, and again, looking at the full impact of these projects, again, in terms of people climate, people climate, and really does kind of holistic way, not just actually these projects to actually So, in terms of how we look at them, talk about here now, infrastructure is very unique, and I think we're talking about kind of different kind of aspects of sustainable development. Infrastructure sits at that intersection between some of the challenges that we're talking about, right? We're talking about climate action. We're talking about sustainable development, and again, just given our past experience here, just the impact of COVID-19 has shown the importance of not more having the infrastructure in place, but also how the sustainable development is not done well. These are the two kind of climate action and development goals that have to be working there. So we have kind of unique challenges in Africa and Asia, and that's what I say around for the future development are actually trying to really address. There's kind of what we call the perception of risk in some of these countries is actually higher than actual risk. So basically, have the private sector generally either through perception or kind of level of capacity in dealing some of the risks. So that's one challenge we face. This thing of looking at kind of returns, again, given the fact that the perception of risk is higher, the kind of return requirements seem to be higher than they should be. We talk about regulation and kind of how that also affects our enabling environment, right, to allow the business to begin. Again, we talk about what we have in terms of think about the amount of actually capital that's big to be deployed, but we actually the timing of this again. In general, for the developing country, that's enabling kind of environment that exists. Again, just lack of capital, right? So that is actually a massive problem. And again, we've talked about all the different ways in which we kind of challenges here that have been highlighted. And so what the page and ground will try and do is basically really focus on trying to bridge some of these gaps and help push the markets in making sure that these projects are being done. Again, while just making sure that we do the climate action at the same time that we actually getting the developing rules that we maintain, and actually getting the infrastructure in place that allow, for example, us to mitigate some of the effects of the pandemic and other. Talking about the gap and what that means, right? What we try and do here is we have a multifaceted kind of approach to looking at the provision of infrastructure. And we talk about, on the one hand, we need to get back to the construction. So obviously, if we want the private sector to be involved and to be able to invest in infrastructure, we need to make sure that these projects are viable and viable. And so if you look at the quadrants over here, what we're trying to do is we usually have a dichotomy of projects. We either have projects that kind of have higher impact, but commercially they have to work, right? So I'll give you an example. One of the areas we have a lot of challenges is in the water sector, right? The impact on the water sector is actually very clear. It has direct impact on people's lives, so they develop impact that's well known. But getting those to be accountable is a challenge. And so what happens is, especially in our context, the water sector is generally being neglected. And so again, what we try to come is trying to kind of see if we can, we like the impact, but try and work with that and make much of that projects. We have additional in that sense. The other part we actually have is actually have low impact projects that are also are very profitable. Right? And so the idea here is that what we want to do in those particular projects is, as much as they are done before, we want to make sure that they're pushing them up the impact spectrum and putting a lens. I think there's a very good discussion here about reporting and making sure that we're asking the right questions about projects, right? And so the idea here is to make sure that we are putting a lens on these particular projects in terms of, let's say, gender, employment, affordability, corruption. All these things are part of the parcel of that intervention. So what Garanto and the page tries to basically accomplish is to move projects to that top right corner, right? Where basically you're doing additional commercially, at the same time also doing additional public impact. Talking a little bit just about the gap in Africa, we know it, and it's been talked about a lot. We're talking about a large gap between 130 billion dollars per year, of which the financing of that is usually the private sector is being looked to provide that is between 60 and 68 and actually 110 million, right? So there's a huge, in Africa, a huge gap there that needs to be filled. And so in terms of opportunities, there are opportunities there. But the reason why this gap, to say it's there, it keeps persisting, is that yes, we find these kind of gaps that exist in terms of the provision of this infrastructure. And so we are trying to basically intervene, as we are on the page, to kind of also help us narrow that gap, but narrowing that gap in a way that's actually sustainable, obviously, and some of those other lenses of impact are actually part of that discussion. I wanted to talk about the gap, and I think this is something that we also want to really kind of highlight. What does it mean, apart from the big number we're talking about? What does the actual real cost of having an infrastructure gap mean? I think this is something that sometimes overlooked, apart from the numbers that people can also what that means. So we're talking about that $100 million are being done per year, and that's kind of growing. But it also means that the actual direct impacts in people's lives, people's livelihoods. Again, we're talking about the inability for us to very power, for example, leads to kind of high mortality rates in mobility because, human beings will have to find a way, right, to sustain their lives, right? So to the extent that these infrastructure is not being deployed, then we're saying we have other interventions will come in, whether it's the generators, whether it's the charcoal, all those things are part of that response to this infrastructure gap, right? Obviously, in water, we're talking about alternatives. People are being forced again to get water from safe sources, which again has kind of direct impacts on livelihoods and the ability of actually economies to actually develop. Because if you don't have a healthy and vibrant economy, you cannot actually develop. And again, so all of these are saying that the point I'm making here is that these gaps actually have not only kind of financial costs, like real costs in terms of the ability of countries to develop, but also in the real impact on people's lives. So, what is the ramp for the page actually doing in terms of climate change in particular and our strategy in this particular area? So, as we talked about here, we have commitments here to the Paris Agreement, and again trying to really move this transition towards kind of a net zero world by 2050, right? So that is at least the core principle that we are really trying to actually achieve, and that has actually been broken down in kind of 4 different priorities, and I kind of talk a little bit about them. The first one being obviously kind of mobilizing private climate finance, right, in fast-growing markets, right? I think we talked about earlier here is that it seems like Africa or developing countries are the ones that have contributed the least to this problem, but they're bearing the latter part of the problem, right? So again, the point here is to make sure that we are making the financing that is needed to kind of close that gap we talked before is actually being done in a way that is, has a low carbon and climate resilient infrastructure. So we are trying to make sure that we move that needle in terms of the needs that these developing countries need, but in a way that's sustainable and obviously has an impact, not as second one also obviously is really climate change adoption and resilience to our investments. So, like we say here, once as we are looking at the projects that we are involved in, we put this lens squarely on those investments. And I think we talked a little bit about the Acorn transaction. That is again one of the impacts that we're very, very proud of. Right? What we're trying to do here, on the one hand, obviously we're delivering needed infrastructure, and that has impact obviously on people's lives, on the economy and people's lives. But also because of our involvement, we're actually pushing some decisions that are made, right, in terms of adopting IFC Edge, doing those type of things that have an impact here on the climate. The third one being is mobilizing the domestic investors, right? And again, that's something we talk about here, and it's something that we are really proud of and really push here in terms of getting local investors involved in the provision of this, in the provision of local infrastructure. I think the question that was actually posed earlier was, who are the beneficiaries? Who are the beneficiaries of this green finance? Right? And what we're saying is, what we believe is the best people who understand local markets and how the impact of these investments have on local investments. It will be local entrepreneurs, local investors, and local stakeholders. So we really push that through our initiatives on the capital markets, working with different regulators, working with all the different kind of stakeholders in the provision of service. And finally, and this is what also is putting that impact lens, right? I talked about it earlier. Really looking at projects holistically. We're talking about data, so making sure we're asking the right questions, we're making investments in terms of SDGs, in terms of impact on people, climate, in terms of impact on the economy. So as we I think discussed earlier in the panel about really having a holistic view of the project and how it is impacting people's lives, how it is impacting the economy, how it is impacting people's health, looking at gender, and some of those things, again, making sure those questions are being asked, are being recorded, and being tracked. That is something that we have to be sitting on the projects that we're involved. That's a quick one again, just in terms of we are very, very focused in terms of sustainable development, making sure that we actually making investments in the sector that we believe that the SDGs actually are very impactful. So we talk about water, we're talking about climate bonds, we're talking about transport, we're talking about renewable energy, we're talking about off-grid, for example, we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about agri-business and supporting agriculture, and kind of natural capital. So again, these are areas, again, as part of our climate strategy, we're really, really focused on in terms of making sure that we are, we're targeting those particular industries and making sure that we're having an impact over there, because we believe that those are the most impact actually in terms of getting to that net zero goal. And I think just finally, again, we are just not talking about this, we're doing it. And what this graph basically shows in the energy sector, talking about kind of what the page and the Aramco have actually done over the last now almost 15 years. And kind of on the left, we have a graph there about investments in energy before kind of this, before 2014. Our investments were about 38% in the renewable sector and 62% in the non-renewable sector. Looking at now kind of 2021 and 2024, the commitments that we have, these are big commitments now. We are actually almost 92% renewable and only 8% on the renewable side. So again, making sure that we are not only talking about these things, but we are putting our money where our mouths are. That's an example of basically how we're trying to really walk the walk. So finally, just a couple of case studies. I'll talk a little bit about one of them. So the Acorn transaction is basically something that we talked about quite a bit, and what, like I said, what was really interesting about this transaction and we're really proud of was the fact that, again, we actually provided a partial guarantee to that 4.3 billion shilling transaction that was done. So in many ways, it takes the box we're talking about, right? We talked about getting a local solution for local problem in terms of the provision of affordable student housing. We talk about into being commercially viable, obviously. This is something that is needed in the country. It has very, the impact is actually in terms of the lives and livelihoods of the people who are benefiting from this is here. And then finally, on the climate side, we're very, again, we insisted here on putting IFC Edge as part of the construction process here. So this was actually very deliberately done, and the developers here have been very, very, very strong in trying to make sure that they actually went over and above. These interventions actually have an economic impact now, meaning that they cost more money. So again, this particular transaction, put together green certification, tick all the boxes, and can really is a great example of how the round of intervention is kind of hitting all those areas of local investors, local stakeholders, local institutional investors, climate, and we're talking about gender here and kind of the beneficiaries of this particular infrastructure being over 45% being women. So this is what we're talking about in terms of putting all these SDG lenses on the income side on top of commercial lenses that should develop and deploy a very successful project. We also did, we have just recently closed a transaction with a company called Evolves. Again, this is a company that provides off-grid solar solutions to mostly rural populations. Again, very, very strong impact in trying to get energy out to rural populations who either did have it or it was actually very affordable to them. Again, here, the impact of the planet is very clear. Again, we are not relying on some of the grid work on the grid to actually provide the power, but again, getting off-grid solutions which have very low carbon footprint. And then again, in terms of the market development, really getting the private sector to fund industry which they are not in this particular point able to provide capital. So the question that was asked earlier about who is benefiting from this green finance is an example where we're talking about those particular people in rural areas are benefiting from kind of finance that green finance is being made available to the government intervention. And finally, just another one, it's a construction in Madagascar. Again, kind of a solar project here, pretty remote part of the island. And again, here, the climate impact is very clear. But again, working to bring a large-scale project, we're talking about 20 megawatts, to an area that actually did not have reliable power. So being able to obviously bring power to a remote part of the country, work with actually international funders to bring financing into the country to allow that to happen. And again, the emissions part of this is actually very clear. We are this basically generators of power to actually provide energy in a particular area, and that has actually been substituted now with renewable energy that is sustainable and ultimately will provide long-term energy to the particular part of the country. So yeah, so I think that's about it. Thank you very much. Again, Yamanco is in this market, and again, we are very happy to work with anybody and partner with anybody who's actually looking to what's going to similar vision that we do. I have a couple of my colleagues here who are willing to have discussions with you if you have a chance. So thanks a lot for my pleasant opportunity.
Another round of applause to thank you so much. Quite detailed what impact all the way down to the people, because I can see exactly what happens in the country. Thank you so much. Appreciation to you as well, and for being part and parcel of the sponsorship of this event. So we appreciate you and send back our regards as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I know I've given you a break time. I'm taking the blame, all right? So, but the sessions are quite intense in themselves. So at this moment, I'm supposed to actually let you have some refreshments. This is what I call it. I call it a short break. I'll give you 5 minutes for bathroom break or so, because time is already spent for the break time. Because we have another panel discussion that is supposed to be next about impact investing, just purely about financing green startups and investor perspective. So I would like to take this 5 minute break for you, be around, you can speak to see any stuff you may have and work in with it, all right? So you don't have to just stay out. And so let's try as much as possible to take that break starting now. So see you soon.